Hi class, it's Bill with the third and I anticipate final video in our single table query topic. We talked first about setup, what kinds of things you know to get started. We talked about the select clause. We've talked now about the where clause, which lets us filter rows. And now we're going to talk about the order by clause and a couple other wrap-up topics. So let's jump down to where we were. That's about slide 29. There we go. So the next thing we want to learn is how to organize the output. You'll notice here before we did get all of our output, but what order is it in? Well, it's probably in whatever order the primary key had it in. This particular EX database has some very weird tables that are unusual, so we won't necessarily count on primary keys, but anyway, they're going to be in some order by default, but it might not be the order that you want. For instance, you might want to see them by state or by city or by last name or by their zip code. So how do you do that? We're going to use the order by clause to accomplish that. The way that you do it is you say at the final clause, remember San Francisco where groovy hippies, which we're not talking about groovy hippies, originate, right? That's the O in order by. So select from where order by. You simply add a clause at the end that says order by, and then you put the column by which you want to sort. But sometimes you'll have duplicates, right? You may have two people with the same last name, and if so, do you want to sort it more, right? Do you want to sort it within that set? If you do, you can put a comma and then put another column and then a comma and another column, however you want to do it. So this says you're going to first have them sorted by last name, and if there are duplicates, you're going to see those things ordered by first name, right? So for instance, all the Smiths are going to be under Smith, and then you're going to see Alan Smith before you see Sandy Smith. So you can have more than one order by field. You can also say by default, by the way, that's going to be ascending, right? That's always going to be in alphabetical order or numerical order, lowest to highest, or date order, oldest to newest. If you want to change that though, you can use the word descending, or DESC for short. And if you put that, you put it after the name of the column, and if you want to sort multiple columns, you have to put this after each one, right? So if you were saying last name, comma, first name, you could say last name descending, comma, first name descending, if you wanted them both to be in descending order. You can also use the word ASC, which is the default, that's ascending order. So you can control, and remember this word comes after each column that you want to do. So if I just said last name descending, comma, first names within those last names are going to be sorted alphabetically, whereas the last names are reverse alphabetical. Right? So this is not like distinct, it goes after each one. Another thing that you can do, and this comes in handy later when our queries get complicated, is that you can, instead of saying which columns, you can say which column number, position, based on how they appear in the select. That's not how they appear in the database, right? It's how they appear in your select clause. So let's go use that real quick and see how to work it. So I'm going to say, for instance, I want to say the customer last name, comma, customer city, comma, and then I'm going to do the customer state, oops, control spacebar, and then customer zip. Right? I'm going to do those from customers. And then I'm going to say order by, and let's try a couple of things. Let's say by customer state. Let's execute that. You notice here they are alphabetized by state. If I want them reverse alphabetical, of course I can say descending. And now you'll see Wyoming comes first, and at the bottom here is Alaska, obviously Anchorage. So you can do that if you like. Remember that if you want to do two, if you wanted to do it by, let's say, state and then by zip code, you can say state and then customer zip. Once you do that, you'll see that the states will all appear together. Here are several Illinois, and within the Illinois they are sorted by customer number, lowest to highest. If you want to reverse either or both of those, you can do that. You can put descending here or descending here. Another way to do this, though, I could say I'm going to sort it by 3, 4, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so this is 3, that's the state, this is the 4, that's the customer zip. Now I don't prefer that because your eyeball still has to go count over and see which thing they were talking about. So I have a preference for this, right? It's just easier to read and be really clear on what columns you're talking about. But sometimes those numbers are extremely useful, and sometimes when we get into super fancy kind of queries, if we even get there, sometimes you just can't figure out what to write down here, or it gets crazy what you have to write, and the numbers just sort of simplify things a little bit and make it really, you know, like at least readable to some extent. So you can do either thing that you want. All right, so that's the last clause, right? We know how to do that. And remember that you can add all the clauses together. So I can say where, you know, last name, customer last name is greater than B. Right, so this is only going to be people whose last name starts with a letter greater than B, or let's do C, because then we know for sure some people are going to be eliminated. And I run that, and now I get 21 rows, right? So 3 different customers got eliminated from that set here, right? So you can use all these clauses together. Select says what columns you want to see. From says what table to pull them from. Where filters based on the data that you talk about here. And order by organizes the output. So that is all the clauses that we're going to cover right now. Last but not least, of course, you're going to have some exercises that ask you to do work on all of the columns together. And again, we'll talk about that in class. I do want to talk about one more thing. I don't think I've asked you to do a union, but let's cover it just in case. There are times when you want to put different queries together for some reason, right? You want multiple queries to show up in the same results list. If so, you can do that using a union. The 2 queries need to have exactly the same columns, right? They need to have exactly the same structure. They can't be varied and have different numbers of columns output, etc. So they really need to be the same, except for maybe the filtering, right? You can put multiple this way. The way you do it is you put the selects, and then between them you use a union, and then you put a semicolon at the end. All right, so an example of this would be, I want to see the first name and the last name, and then I want to see the word accounting, right? I want to see first name, last name, and the word accounting shown with a column header of department from the employees where department number equals 4. So we know accounting is department 4, so here we go. Here's some people from accounting, right? But then we do another query where we're pulling people from department 6, and we know department 6 is marketing. So in this case, the things are exactly the same. First name, last name, and department are being pulled out, even though this word is different. That doesn't matter. Still 3 columns, and this one is the department column. And then if I put the word union between those 2, you'll see that they will appear in the same output window. So here's the accounting folks, here's the marketing folks. You can sort those, right, by putting them, by putting some an order by clause at the end, etc. So a union is an interesting thing. Now, generally we don't need to use unions. Generally we're going to see, you know, for instance, why do we have to make this up? Isn't there somewhere where it tells what 4 means? Usually that would be in another table, so we would just bring in data from another table. So unions aren't required a lot of the time, but in some versions of some quarters we have talked about unions, and maybe I've made you do a union in your assignment. Who knows, maybe it's still in there. So just wanted to cover that so you know it exists, and if you have to use it, you'll have a reference. The last slide that we have here is just references. If you want to know something more about wildcards, there is a reference here, and sometimes I'll provide that at the end of the slides. So that brings us to the end of our topics. Hope that you have learned a lot about the select command, and we know how to use quite a few options now in select, from, where, and order by. We will certainly add to our knowledge next time when we cover multiple table queries, right? Those get fun. But this is foundational knowledge, again, stuff that you need to know because at work, if you're working in a database, you need to know how to do your queries. So enjoy, and we will see you in a future video. Thanks for watching this one.